So, welcome again. I'm going to start with a brief explanation of the title of this session for those of you, particularly who are not familiar with this method of Gurdjieff called the toast of the idiots. And so apologies for those who are familiar with the scheme. The notion of idiot is important to understand, at least in outline. It means something of its own nature, a specific kind of nature to have. It doesn't mean a fool or somebody who's stupid. No, it's a distinctive uh, state of mind, one could say, for example. Now, this scheme of Gurdjieff's had very idiosyncratic stages in it. And for example, there are things called zigzag idiots and round idiots and other sorts of idiots like those for whom there are 5 Fridays in a week. And his beautiful inventive language for all these elements. And he would have these parties with vodka, and the toast would come, and sometimes he would identify a person in the gathering there as a certain kind of idiot. And the feeling or intention of it was that it would highlight some feature of that person, some characteristic, which later people associated sometimes with the Gurdjieff notion of chief feature, something which is typifying that person, which is their way, but also their barrier to really understanding. Now, I'd briefly say there were two say fixed points in it, so to speak. There was first of all the ordinary idiot, and I'll just leave it undefined. And then ultimately there was the unique idiot, and the unique idiot was God. Now there are various stages in this, and it can be treated sometimes as stages, but I'll just speak about the one in reference to our title. And it was to consciously descend from enlightened idiot down to ordinary idiot. And he said many things, some of them contradictory and so on, but one thing he said about the enlightened idiot is that the enlightened idiot is in great peril. He is, or she is, in a way, absolutely stuck, and they need help to get out of this fix they're in, which he implies is being so-called enlightened. And it is like many of the parts of the toast of the idiots, and you can look at Bruno's wonderful book about it, which we've given you the link to. Each of them is very evocative, and you've got to follow it, because Gurdjieff himself said it one time again. People love to look into schemes of people, types, like the Ichazo scheme of personalities and all that sort of thing. But Gurdjieff always said, you can't treat this like a science, it's always an art. And so he practiced this as an art. And don't take it as some kind of system which you can go up and down by some kind of conceptual link. So it's maybe astonishing to get that statement that the enlightened idiot is in a fixed, and the only way for him or her is to consciously descend, not consciously descend. In English, we have the two words conscience, conscious, and conscience, which have different tonalities in English. Other language like French, you don't. But this is consciously descend. I think it's the most wonderful use of language facility Gurdjieff had. It's with conscience descent. Why do it? Because you see the truth of one's situation. One is not pretending anymore. Now, what is it to be an ordinary idiot? Here's a challenge here implicit, and if I start to spell it out a little, forgive me, because I think all these really vivid parts of Gurdjieff should be left without fixed interpretations, as if, there is textbook explanation for what they mean. Of course, one tries to find out what they mean and so on. But oh, is there something beyond any fixed concept? And they are very subtle sometimes. And the thing to, I think, to bear in mind, and in your heart too, is that they're kind of calling for a subtlety in you yourself when looking at these things. And often explanation is used by us to put our minds at rest, to come to a kind of dead calm, so to speak. You know, when I was saying my general feeling about things that I tend to think when people say in a conversation or something like this, I understand, I tend to see them as having become comfortable and fixed in a way which means they are no longer thinking or questioning or being conscious at all, but they've come to a nice, tranquil place where nothing bothers them. And to say, I understand means, I am calm now. I am not troubled. But what it is to be an ordinary idiot is now remarkable. And this was a facet, from my belief or experience, with Mr. Bennett, because he was a man who loved cosmic schemes and structures, and he would go talking about the transcendental realms ad infinitum and vistas upon vistas, right up to the transfinite reality, the unfathomable source, all that kind of stuff. But usually in the end, he would sort of pause and turn around and say, well, it's all here and now. You don't have to go to some vast cosmic region light years away or the birth of the universe. It's all here and now. And that's one of our mysteries. It's all here and now, but we don't see it in the here and now. And we seem to have to go, in my opinion, chasing after dreams and fantastic possibilities, because the difficult thing is to see already what is and what we have. One other thing I'll say in this introduction before, and the thing which will follow this in about 5 minutes is going to be I'm going to work with you with a little very simple inner exercise. I want to mention a context in which I think we are living, where, because I'm 80 odd years old now and have been messing around with this so-called work or fourth way for a long time. And you could look at me and say, well, where has it got you, Blake? And I could say, well, I don't know, as far as I'm concerned, not very far at all. But all these early dreams one gets of being a master of oneself, of having an inner body, of having a transcendental vision, of objective perception, consciousness, and all this sort of thing. These are like, what do I call it? Almost somebody dangling sweeties in front of oneself. And these are wonderful things, these dreams. And they're like very other things in our culture, which are to do with our dreams, our fantasies, our myths, our legends, our fairy stories, the things which come out of us, which are just there to entice us and draw us on, like that famous scene in the movie 2001, where the Australopithecine humanoids, touch this amazing monolith, which when they touch it gives them vistas of a better life. And this inspires them to work. And there's a lot to understand in human life about how people are inspired to work to make something which first came to them as a dream. But then it comes to be, what is this state of ordinary idiot where we don't have apparently immortality or anything profound like that? Has it all been worthwhile? What is it to come home again to being this ordinary idiot, which is in the sense like anybody else, at any time, anywhere? Why is this so, in the end, in the sense of in the end, so amazing? All right, that's my introduction to give some context, best I can do. Now turn to our first punctuation. I call this whole thing, this whole session, a punctuated conversation. So I do hope you will be able to speak yourselves, each one of you, or many of you, because that's important. Because that's what really is here. What really is here is you. You know, and you, I think many of you are now old or wise enough or practiced enough or disillusioned enough to know that all the various things you've learned and practiced and so on, these are meritorious. But the real thing is something direct and still unknown. So this is a sort of exercise which is not an exercise. We'll be doing it for about another 15 minutes. And one of the words which Gurdjieff uses in connection with this, it's only in connection with this, in his book, Beelzebub's Tales to his grandson, is taken from the part of the chapter on art. We have this wonderful make-believe story of these learned beings gathered in Babylon, and there were learned beings gathered in Babylon about the 6th century BC, who had been imprisoned and taken there, including even Pythagoras at one time, who got together and had this idea of how can they implant material into these artifacts, which are dances and music and architecture made by people, which are being made, which could last and be transmitted to future generations and be a benefit to them. And so his one for the Saturday, when it's on Saturday, which Beelzebub said he most enjoyed, which was about theatre and drama, and which was very improvisational. It was very interesting. But he said the condition to enter into, as an actor, into this process, he gave this wonderful sounding name. Don't ask me to explain a bit of it. Darthalusnian contemplation. And what this was the contemplation of the associations going on in all three centers without any interference, without any construct being put upon them. So this is what I invite you to do. It's the word I've mentioned, Arthur Lustig, may be, of course, just nonsense word to you, or may stimulate something, but the word contemplation might. I'm just going to ask you for the next about 10 minutes to be quiet. And this is perhaps the most difficult exercise of all, is to allow to whatever arises in you by itself to arise and to just contemplate it without any direction, judgment, alteration, labeling, or anything like that. It's quite a formidable task. So in a moment, I will be quiet and invite you, say, for 10 minutes to do what you can in this. Remember, just to be quiet, relaxed, and have a go. Begin. So I must have tried in this context, try to avoid, interpreting what anybody says, which I've been in groups for many, many years, which that happens, and it's a kind of, how to say, pressure or coercion or on people, turning their experience into something which fits one's ideas and so on. So I just finished with a very my own kind of observation. I would always say in an exercise like this, I really hope, but it gives an opportunity to look at something which might be useful for you in some sense. And some of you have touched it and some of you haven't, perhaps. So what do I know? But it is very important, I think, as in looking at this ordinary life, these things as they are, right, as well as still taking some kind of intention towards what is going on in oneself. And this, what is going on in oneself, is quite complex and rich. And for myself, I'm always surprised when I do this and I see how rich and complex this all is. And that's there with us every moment of the day. And so I know some of you don't find the associations of any particular value. Some of you do and have extended them into some kind of memory or insight. But whatever you do is whatever you do, and there isn't a right way of doing this. But with myself, I simply say whenever I do this, I am amazed. And so we segue on to the next point of punctuation, which is this a resurgence, excuse me, going back to something we did in the last session, I believe in the last session, which was the apparently simple task of walking into the room. And I wanted to do it again for various justifications. One is that some simple exercise like this is worthwhile doing a few times because things change in oneself and things are coming to the surface and so on. And it needs a kind of maturation through practice. But also I wanted to extend it in a very simple way. And I always emphasize this in a very simple way because these exercises we're doing in this particular session are, in a sense, absolutely, I don't know, I'm going to call it basic, not complicated in themselves at all, but things which might arise in us in our everyday lives, like even this one we've just did. You may be just, as you say, daydreaming or sitting around or waiting for a bus, you see. And I would say, and this is an assertion by me, you can ignore, of course, that if you have a touch of this, being aware of the associations, there is a chance of a nourishment of a very special kind. So I'm going to alter it slightly and extend the time. And here we go. As you know, originally we had it so that you just entered the room you're in. Now I'm going to extend it to give more time to entering your house. Now, in whatever way you treat this, you can just go to some other room or the kitchen or the back door or the front door, but have this so you have a bigger walking in to sitting back on your chair. And that's the first part of it, just doing that and not giving any instruction about how you comport yourself in doing this, but of course, it's in the context of what we've just done. Now, and when you come to sit on the chair, then what I want you to do is recapitulate your walk, but do it backwards, starting from sitting on the chair to right back to when you started. And there is quite a history of this kind of practice of you do something and then you review it actually in reverse order. And this doing things in reverse order can be very illuminating. If you have the time after that, then repeat the walk into your room until you sit down. And we have for this just, I think only 10 minutes now. So possibly we just do those first two parts. Walking in, this longer walk, and then recapitulating it backwards. Thank you very much. Please begin. All right. Now we'll talk about this a bit. For me, we're surprised how what organic effect this sort of thing has on me. But I want you to speak. It's really something to speak about one's experience. I always hope for people that it is a discovery, not just giving a report like giving a report at school or something like that. No, that something happens when we speak to another about something we've experienced. But try and not take too long over it with an explanation. And whatever it is that has come to you, please speak of it. I felt reminded of in the early days, it's such a feature of the sort of things we did was just remembering oneself while passing through a door. Every time one passed through a door, I had to kind of remember yourself. And this always, in a sense, attracted me. But what I've done here is to expand this, and it is to, well, do something for how we are in the everyday experiences of our life, in going from A to B. There might be, as you are implying, a great deal to be discovered. All right. So I will shut up. Another person, please. And another person. Again, as we know, the method people speak, I try to minimize my putting an interpretation of what people say because it's the variety or distinctive variety of your attempt to actually speak your experience that matters. That's the only comment I want to make is that, first of all, it might seem so futile or absurd to actually think about investigating ordinary life as something significant. It's amazing. You see this incredible process going on all the time, which, if you will forgive me, I will describe by the crude terms we're hardly aware of. It's just amazing. And some of it may not be so nasty, like full of pains and all the rest, but what's actually going on is extraordinary. All right, we have just 1 minute. I suppose one thing which, this is to quote somebody, which I often say, well, don't quote things and get into theories, but it always struck me, the remarkable man, Soren Kierkegaard, renowned for saying that how we live life forwards, we understand it backwards. And I think it's worthwhile reflecting on. The other is that to spell out the obvious, that this sort of exercise might be quite rightly taken as to be about trivia, like you say, like brushes, like the surface of the wall, and so on. But it's giving a significance to these things, and it raises the question or the possibility or the feeling that there's something. What is this which can give things significance? Things which don't have to be earth-shaking or dramatic or holy or anything like that. But this giving of things and events significance it strikes me a very, very precious thing. And the other thing I want to mention is how, as I said last time, you can take this theme about a walk into your room as just an archetypal atom of all our lives. And in all our lives, we're going from A to B. I used to say there's nothing in human life which happens besides we go from A to B and we talk. But it's strictly, that's all we do. We're all the time, we're going from A to B. And a lot of the time, we've got no idea of what's contained in going from A to B at all. We just go from A to B. We don't give a monkeys about how we do it or what happens on the way at all. But just it's because we're at A and we want to be at B. And so we go to B and there we are at B and then we want to be at C and so on. It's like that. But so this stopping and looking at a very simple movement is just an invitation to possibly discover something for ourselves about what actually our lives are like, and certainly getting below the threshold of the ordinary kind of space opera, which, if I may be forgiven for saying so, we often project ourselves into. Now on to the third punctuation. And this is a repeat or another example, but with a different medium of what we call neural education, the term taken from Ted Matchett, who I worked with many years ago, to do with really with listening to music, but this we're going to extend to listening it to sounds. And it's treating these sounds as a meaningful action which we can enter into. And so you might be able to see, and maybe I'm saying too much because I don't want to force a connection for you between that and the first exercise you see, where you're going to see, make this what is going on in us anyway, actually enter into what we are listening to. In this case, as I said, the sound will not be musical sounds per se. It's actually taken from a series of very, very natural sounds. But I myself, over the years, have conducted a lot of sessions with the use of these natural sounds, particularly of the wind, or partially the organic world of bird song, and of thunder and lightning. And these, if you listen, so it can have an effect. I remember the exercise I did with this kind of sound, in which amazing people could do physical things which ordinarily would be difficult or painful. They could do them easily, and so on. There are all sorts of things to come out of it, but I shouldn't really dwell on them. So we're going to do this, but then, you see, well, one of the components with Matchett, which was important, was that we don't just simply listen, but we listen with a question. So I suggest, and it's only a suggestion, because as one of the things that people said during this last hour or so, was that this question arose of who am I? Or what is my reality? You know, you've come across this many times in books, Ramana Maharshi and Nisargadatta, Shivapuri Baba, and all of this. What is the meaning of life? Whatever one of these questions, and just, but all you have to do is hold that question. That's your contribution, to have a question or a quest or whatever it is. And let's see what comes. So, Stephen, are you ready to do the business?
I am. So I'm going to play the audio. Everybody will hear. We don't have to do anything other than just listen.
Thank you. I did sort of thing in groups. I still remember, God knows when it was 15 years ago, I think it was in some group. And it wasn't natural sounds, it was music by a modern Italian composer, Scelsi, who was an extraordinary genius. But anyway, two ladies in the group ran in terror and locked themselves in the broom cupboard. Wouldn't come out until it had finished. But I tried to be more gentle after that with people. But thank you for your, um, I would say, I was going to call it very empirical observations. Anybody else? I believe I recognize what you speak of, but this conveyed to me the importance of this. You know, they say this is like the thing in itself, the experience in itself. It's complete in itself, and it's has that uh, strength. Yes, the one of the things I've been concerned with in these sessions we have is to, you know, say not to be uh, let's say stuck with the old regime, so to speak, which had exercises which were in certain format, for example, and lectures in a certain format and so on, to do it differently. But it's for me been a very leitmotif about this appreciation of the elements of almost ordinary experience in life which are ignored by most people. And it's been noticed by such esteemed people as Galileo, for example. You know, wise people are those who attend to things which ordinary people just ignore because they take them for granted. And it's getting back to when you said about this, almost like an atomic or molecular or a moment. I used to call this moments of meaning, so to speak, which have their own character and their reality. And it's different from when you entwine them into a theoretical construct or the expression, but it's not to knock the construct for its own, because it's but a wish to put these moments into something more like a work of art rather than a theory. Because a work of art is always unique and creative and concrete and sensual and not dry, not separated. And maybe we can't make sense of these things in an easy way. But what I've been concerned with is finding this way of entering into things which got this taste of experience itself. And it's like knowing it for the first time. You know, so, oh, yeah.
Yes.
Would anybody else like to comment?
What Dirk spoke about was for me very resonant. There was in our first exercise that we did today, there was an image that came to me of a certain intersection in my hometown that my family lived in since I was a teenager. And it didn't have any resonance about it. I wasn't sure why it was there, and it didn't go further in that exercise um, to give any kind of clue. And I was about to dismiss it, except that I realized that this is actually an image that comes to me, that there's something there, even though right now it's a mystery. Um, so what Anthony and what Dirk were just talking about just I don't know, just kind of feeds to that where there's like a mystery now. And I'm actually going there next week, which will be interesting. Going home for the families, going home for the holidays to see my family. Um, so it's just kind of a mystery, like what happened there. So we'll see.
Maybe you tell us about it in the future someday. All right. Well, okay, well, I feel, well, speaking for myself, I feel these reverberations go from something like this and to acknowledge the gratitude I need to offer you for allowing this assemblage to come together. And it's not like having a group meeting or having a let's get together and work on the fourth way or anything like that at all. Or what do triads mean? All these are all there, and we share in them in different ways. But this preciousness of actual concrete experience is something to be valued above all else, and because it's out of this that we forge, maybe, as Bruno was saying, do we have a soul? Forge our soul, and all these big questions come. But this is an opportunity to get together, and because each of us is different and can offer something to each other, because we are not the same as each other, but we also are exactly the same as each other. So we're all voices of ourselves. All of you are voices of me. And one gets this part of an exercise like with the sound, and I would say the hurricane for me, it goes in and out for me, this is a sound, a recording of a hurricane on a certain place, certain time. So until you know it's not outside there, which I was wondering, but it actually it's inside. And this taste of this reversal of what is outside and inside, if you get stuck in a certain view of this, one is stuck. If you get these moments when they invert or exchange or go upside down, it's not like the outside becomes inside, the inside becomes outside. This is, for me, sound desperately exciting. And I can't claim to explain why or what it's for or anything like this. But anyway, going up to the season of Christmas, and whether you're a Christian or not, just let's say God bless. Bless ye, merry gentlemen and ladies. Uh, and let's enjoy the image of the wise men coming to worship Jesus in the manger and whatever other things appeal to us. And to finish, if again Stephen can uh, do the business, I'm going to sort of sound this out with all my deep heart wishes for true happiness and well-being in this season. And this would be Gurdjieff playing his harmonium, this strange melancholic music which he did to his group's meeting in Paris in 1947 or thereabouts. And so again, thank you, thank you for coming together, because in moments some 10 or so years ago, I was in a massive group meeting and I just suddenly realized, God is us. Well, that's my thing. God is us. Not me, but us. It's when we come together and we face this difference. We don't like other people or we like them. It's much the same. And we try to be good people and listen, but our attempts to listen to other people just get in the way. There's this moments which we are sharing in, I'm sure to some degree, where we can just accept each other and get into this other kind of mind and consciousness, which isn't our possession, our tool, our identity, or anything like that, but is something which we share in common and perhaps with all life. So, anyway, if you can, Stephen, can we have the music of Gurdjieff for?
Yes, I'm gonna place the I've just done in the chat link to YouTube, so you'll open separately from the browser and go ahead and stay on the Zoom session, or then just log off whenever you see fit. Great
So
seeing
I'll
you.
be officially closing the session after the music. Okay. Bye bye.